Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive. You know how much we love unpacking thought-provoking stuff, and today is no different. We're diving into this article, The Real Cost of Oversupporting Your Kids. It's got me thinking a lot about that fine line between wanting the best for your kids and also, you know, wanting them to find their own way in the world.
Yeah, it's a tough one for sure. I mean, we all want our kids to succeed, right? But when does support become over support? And what are the real consequences of, maybe going a bit overboard?
Yeah, and this article really doesn't hold back. It jumps right into this trend of over-supporting. Did you see that statistic about parents spending like, what was it, $500 billion annually on their adult children?
Oh, yeah, that one's a real eye-opener. 500 billion. It's twice what they're putting towards their own retirement.
Yeah.
Kind of makes you wonder, are we setting ourselves up for trouble down the line?
It's a bit mind-boggling, isn't it? I mean, on the one hand, you want to be there for your kids, help them out, but then there's that other side, like, are we creating a generation that's maybe a little too reliant on mom and dad?
And that's where the article really gets interesting. It's not just about the money, it's about the potential for creating this kind of unintended dependency.
Right. It's like almost stunting their growth in a way. And the article doesn't just focus on the kids either. It talks about the impact on parents, too.
Exactly. And it's not always pretty. I mean, you can imagine the resentment that can build up when parents feel like they're constantly bailing their kids out.
Mhm.
And on the flip side, you have the kids who might start feeling entitled or, lacking the motivation to really push
It's
themselves.
that whole opportunity cost thing, isn't it?
Mm.
Every dollar spent on adult children is a dollar that's not going towards something else, like their own retirement or their own dreams.
Exactly. And it's not just the financial opportunity cost either. It's the time, the energy, the emotional bandwidth that goes into constantly supporting adult children can really take a toll.
So where do we draw the line then? How do we support our kids without, creating this unhealthy dependence? The article had some advice, but I'm curious to hear your take on it as well.
Well, I think one of the most important things is setting clear boundaries. Being upfront with your kids about what you are and aren't willing to support and for how long.
That makes sense, but I imagine it's easier said than done. You
Yeah.
see your kids struggling, and it's natural to want to jump in and help.
Oh, absolutely. It's tough. It takes a lot of discipline. But ultimately, it's about empowering your kids to find their own solutions. Instead of just giving them a handout, encourage them to explore other options like part-time work or freelancing.
So it's about fostering that sense of self-reliance rather than dependence.
Hmm.
And that ties into what the article said about teaching financial literacy.
Huge one. If young adults don't learn how to manage their own money, they're going to face some serious challenges down the line.
It's true. I mean, I think back to my own early adulthood, and I made so many financial mistakes. It would have been a game changer to have had a better grasp of things back then.
Right. And we often assume that young people will just pick these skills up naturally, but that's rarely the case. It takes deliberate effort and guidance from us as parents.
So it's like we have to be financial mentors as well as, emotional support systems.
Mm.
And the article touches on that too, the idea that support isn't always about money.
Right. Sometimes the most valuable support we can offer is emotional support, being a sounding board, helping them navigate tough decisions, offering encouragement and guidance.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's about being there for them in a way that truly helps them grow and become independent.
Exactly. It's about striking that balance, supporting their dreams while also empowering them to create their own path.
It's tricky, but it's so important.
Mm.
And this article really highlights the long-term consequences of getting it wrong, for both the parents and the children.
It's a wake-up call for sure, and it's something we all need to be thinking about. How do we support our kids in a way that sets them up for success, both financially and emotionally?
And how do we do that without, inadvertently holding them back or creating a sense of entitlement? It's a tough one, but it's a conversation worth having.
Absolutely. And the more we talk about it, the more we can start to shift those societal expectations and create a healthier dynamic for everyone involved.
Yeah, it's not about being the perfect parent. It's
Okay.
about being mindful and intentional about the kind of support we're providing.
And recognizing that sometimes the most loving thing we can do is step back and let our kids figure things out on their own.
It's about trusting them to make their own choices and learn from their own experiences.
And knowing that we're there for them as a safety net, not a crutch.
Beautifully said. And I think that's a great place to pause for now. We've covered a lot of ground, and I know our listeners have a lot to think about. We'll be back in the next part to dive even deeper into this topic, so stay tuned.
Yeah, it's like we're giving them the tools to build their own house, But we're also kind of hovering over them and making sure every brick is placed perfectly.
Right. And that's not really how you learn to build a house, is it?
Exactly. Sometimes you gotta let them make a few mistakes, you know? Let them figure out what works and what doesn't.
And that can be tough for us as parents.
Yeah.
We want to protect them from those
Yeah,
mistakes.
absolutely. But those mistakes are valuable learning experiences. They build resilience, problem-solving skills, all those things that they need to thrive as adults.
So how do we find that balance then between supporting them and letting them make those mistakes?
Well, the article talked about setting clear boundaries. I think that's a huge one.
Boundaries with adult children, how does that even work?
It's about being upfront and honest with them, having those sometimes tough conversations about what you're willing to support and what you're not.
So like maybe you're okay helping out with college tuition, but not with their rent after graduation or something like that.
Exactly. It's about defining those expectations early on and being consistent.
Consistency is key, right? Because if you're constantly wavering and giving in,
Yeah.
it just sends mixed messages.
Exactly. It undermines the whole point of setting those boundaries in the first place.
So boundaries are important.
Mm-mm.
But what about those situations where your kid really is struggling? They're facing a genuine hardship.
Well, even then, it's about finding ways to support them that empower them rather than enable them.
What do you mean by that?
Instead of just handing them money, maybe you help them brainstorm solutions. Maybe they need to pick up a part-time job or cut back on some expenses or look into government assistance programs. There are options out there.
So it's about being a resource guide rather than a financial crutch.
Exactly. It's about helping them navigate those challenges and develop those problem-solving skills that they'll need throughout their lives.
It's like teaching them to fish rather than just giving them the fish.
Perfect analogy. And that ties into another important point from the article, teaching financial literacy.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one. I mean, if they don't know how to manage their own money, they're going to be in trouble.
Right. And it's something that we often overlook as parents. We assume they'll just figure it out, but it's not that simple.
It's like we need to add financial literacy teacher to our ever-growing list of parental roles.
It's true. And it doesn't have to be complicated. Start by encouraging them to create a budget, track their spending, learn about saving and investing.
Even just understanding the basics of credit can be a game changer.
Absolutely. It's about giving them the tools to make informed financial decisions.
And it's not just about money either,
Hmm.
right? The article talked about other forms of support that can be just as important.
Right. Sometimes the most valuable support we can offer is emotional support, just being there to listen, to offer advice, to encourage them through tough times.
It's about being a sounding board and a cheerleader,
Yeah.
someone they can rely on for guidance and support.
Exactly. And that kind of support can go a long way in helping them build confidence and resilience.
So it's about finding that balance again, supporting them emotionally without creating a sense of dependence.
Right. It's about striking that sweet spot where you're providing support, but also allowing them the space to grow and figure things out on their own.
And that can be a tough line to walk. I mean, it's natural to want to step in and fix things for them,
Yeah.
but sometimes that does more harm than good.
It's about letting go a little bit,
Right.
trusting them to make their own choices and learn from their own experiences.
Which can be scary, but it's ultimately what's best for them.
Exactly. It's about empowering them to create their own fulfilling lives, both financially and emotionally.
And isn't that what we all want for our kids,
Yeah.
ultimately?
Absolutely. And I think this whole conversation has really highlighted the importance of being mindful and intentional about the kind of support we're providing.
Yeah, it's not about following some rigid set of rules. It's about having those open conversations with our kids and figuring out what works best for everyone involved.
Exactly. And recognizing that sometimes the most loving thing we can do is to step back and let them fly on their own. It's about finding that balance,
Yeah.
like we've been saying, supporting them without holding them back.
Giving them the wings to fly, but also, making sure they know how to land.
Exactly. It's a delicate dance.
It is. Yeah. And I think what this whole conversation boiled down to is that there's no one-size-fits-all answer.
Right. Every family, every situation is different.
Exactly. So it's about having those honest conversations with your kids
Figuring out what works best for everyone involved.
and being willing to adapt as they grow and change.
Because their needs are going to evolve over time.
Exactly. So what can our listeners do to start having these conversations?
Well, I think the first step is just to acknowledge that this is a complex issue. There's no easy answer.
Right. It's not about being the perfect parent or having all the solutions
It's about being open to learning and growing alongside your kids.
and being willing to have those sometimes uncomfortable conversations,
Exactly, because ultimately it's about what's best for your child.
helping them become the best version of themselves,
And that might mean stepping back and letting them stumble a little.
giving them the space to make their own choices and learn from their own mistakes.
And knowing that you're there for them as a safety net, not a crutch.
Beautifully said. And I think that's a great note to end on. This deep dive has been so insightful,
I agree. It's definitely given us all a lot to think about.
and I hope it's encouraged our listeners to have those important conversations with their own kids
About finding that balance between support and independence.
and empowering them to create their own fulfilling lives. So thanks for joining us today, everyone,
It's been a pleasure.
and we'll see you next time for another deep dive.